Hello, everyone. We are Don't Mess with the Mommas, Mommas, with our motto
is
You are the protagonist of your life, not the victim of your destiny. And you are?
I'm Carla today.
And I'm Arlaana today and always. So today is our 41st episode. Yay. And this episode is called Got Courage? Question mark. You're wondering why I have our little Zoey pug on my lap. And she has to do with courage. She's also, I have to brag about her, we would show you about how amazing she is at puzzles. I mean, she is such an expert at the most difficult doggy puzzles that I can't even figure out some of those puzzles. Plus, she knows how to cheat. Wow. We would show you, except it's a little bit hard maneuvering the camera. Mm-hmm. But the reason that I have her on my lap, she was born with such a rare skin condition that they thought she was going to die from cancer. She had pustules all over her body, and just to show you as cute as she is, she's got lots and lots and lots, lots and lots and lots of scars. Mm-hmm. However, we determined that she was going to survive no matter what. Now, can a dog experience courage? They don't understand it, but they are so courageous in so many ways. Also, we had her have surgery called brachiocephalic surgery for her little nosy so she could breathe better. And right after the surgery, as they were taking her off the anesthesia, she coded for 5 minutes. Now, needless to say, we all stayed up all night chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo and determining that she would survive. And she did. Not only did she survive, but she was supposed to be in the ICU at the hospital, and she was able to leave the very next day, which was amazing. But her whole body filled up with air. It was very, very, very bizarre, but she came back full force. So that's our little Zoey, and she's an example of great courage, right? So Zoey, I'm going to put you down now, okay? Is that okay? All right. Okay. I can't hold you anymore. All right.
I think she's saying, no, I want to come back. I want to come back.
She will. Yeah, you see, she wants to be with me, but whatever. Zoey, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
She'll just lick Carla's feet. That's
yes,
it.
I every time, without a doubt.
So with courage, there's the most interesting etymology. I think that's the word. The origin of the word courage is fascinating. So Carla, take it away.
So in my little research, I learned that courage comes from Latin, and it has the meaning is from the heart. Okay, it's spirit, inner strength. It's not just about love; it's about anger, passion, valor, those wonderful things. And
oh, go ahead.
Oh, and there are many different forms of courage.
But before we even talk about the forms of courage, what's also interesting when you think about words and their origin, the word encourage. So they come from the same source. So when you're encouraging somebody, you're basically giving them courage, the courage to really battle with whatever they're faced with. So not only when you encourage somebody, are you encouraging them to get courage, but you are getting more courage, right?
Yes.
Which is really, so it's important that we encourage each other.
Right.
So you were going to talk about the different forms of courage, right?
Well, you have, one type is moral courage.
What's that?
That's like standing up for what's right.
That's hard. That's hard to do.
But you can develop that. It's like a muscle. And then you have emotional courage, the ability to be vulnerable, in relationship, or, just to be, you can be vulnerable with your neighbors. You don't know if you knock on their door, if they're going to come with a smile or a frown, or, are you being a little bit too pushy? So, that's a vulnerability.
So, let's talk about each one. So with emotional courage, I think that it's the confidence to just be yourself, you know. And so many people think they need to put on some kind of a whatever, you know, shield themselves. But the more honest you could be with yourself, just being yourself, that takes tremendous courage. But by being yourself, that's when you can really enjoy your life. You know, you don't want to have the feeling that, oh, if only I had a little bit more courage. You know, at the end of your life, wow, not have any regret. You know, courage is really so natural. Sometimes just courage means taking a baby step.
Yes.
If you're agoraphobic, you know, you're afraid to go out the door, opening up the door an inch is courage.
Right.
Then seeing somebody and maybe even talking to them, as you said, your neighbor, who might be mean or might be
nice,
wonderful.
You never know, you know?
You never know, yeah. So looking at that opportunity, and even if you're rejected, so what? So what? Lots of rejections throughout life, but that's all natural.
That's part of life. Somebody will say no, but somebody else will say yes.
Right.
Then there's the emotional courage of being vulnerable, like I said before. Right. And Brene Brown says that courage is the birthplace of love, and so you have to have courage to love. So that's, I'm going to use my card for a second because I want to get her quote right. She said, vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, and joy, the bedrock of authentic relationships and mental health.
Wow. Yeah, mental health, that's a biggie.
Yeah.
And I think today, especially among youth, because we're so attached to our social media platforms and people aren't interacting as much. So the less you have that experience of interacting, the more fearful you become. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why relationships are not happening like they used to back in the olden days when, you know, we didn't have all these, you know, social media platforms.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I know, you know, looking at young people today, younger people or whatever age, to take that leap of faith and be able to open up and talk to another human being, even talk to another human being, these days requires courage.
Yeah.
And it's just like exercise, right? If you don't do it, it's hard to do. But the more you do it, the more you gain confidence and courage.
Right.
Let's see.
And then there's vital courage. Vital
what's
courage.
that?
Vital courage is like, you know, having to face a chronic illness. You know, that you just keep pushing, and, you know, day by day, you deal with whatever you have to deal with. So it's like it's a necessity that you get through. You can't stop living because you're sick.
Right.
You know, you have to keep going.
And I think people who, you know, who are diagnosed with some kind of a severe illness, you know, a lot of times they just become so defeated. But by having the courage to say, you know what, I'm going to whether defeat this illness or win over my own weakness, you know, to have the courage to say, my illness is not going to defeat me. I'm going to defeat my illness, you know, and that's very, very challenging and very difficult. But you know, many people, you know, have been able to use absolutely, we use difficulties to become stronger and more courageous.
True. And then the other thing is, like, you know, vital courage is, you know, you could be severely depressed.
Right.
All right. But you get out the bed and you go about your day. You may be dragging, but you go about your day. There was a lady who said that she was so depressed that all she could do was move her toe. And that's all she could do. And eventually she was able to get her whole body up to move. So it's that one little thing that you do.
Yeah, and celebrate those small acts of courage. It could be the smallest. I just want to share something too. Sorry to use cards.
That's all right.
And also when you're showing courage, you can inspire so many people. You know, I always think about the unsinkable Molly Brown. Now, the Titanic was sinking and many people lost their lives. But when she came out and said, this this is not going to sink. Titanic is not going to sink because I'm unsinkable. Mm-hmm. It gave people courage, even at the last moments of their lives, so they can die. Those who didn't survive, they can die without that incredible fear, and that makes a difference as well.
The other thing about courage is that it's contagious. It spreads.
Yes.
So that's an example of that. Then we have the other word that I got was, that vital courage is like also showing up in difficult situations. Your family, your husband, your wife, your children, just showing up. I know about that because I had my aunt and she was, oh gosh, sometimes, I would have to have like a chair and a whip, to deal with her, okay? Back! But I kept showing up, and I said, love is like showing up for people even when they don't appreciate you. It's, so I passed the test on that one.
So to go over some things, without adversity, a life without adversity is empty and uneventful. And as you said, when we encourage, it's contagious, absolutely. When you show it, they say, oh, well, if that person can do it, so can I. It's just like when I got married at 39 years old or close to 40, all the women got up and sang The Impossible Dream. And they said, if you could do it, anyone can. It gave them a lot of confidence, I guess, because they said that she's never getting married.
Right.
I also wanted to share some personal acts of courage. So when I had I needed to have open heart surgery, and I felt perfectly fine. I was perfectly healthy, no symptoms, because they said what you had is if you get symptoms, then you usually die.
Right.
So going into the hospital and having open heart surgery, and especially in those days, was really much more involved than it is today. But because I was able to defeat fear, I was able to get so much more than I could even have anticipated. But at the last minute, I did call one of my, seniors in faith in our organization, the SGI, and I said, well, I think it's a sign that they didn't call me, to tell me they have a bed available, so maybe it's a sign that I don't need the surgery. And he said, no, just come, and I have a scissors, I'll do it for you. So it made me laugh so much that it gave me the confidence and the courage to endure, open heart surgery. And, sometimes, I still have a fear. I don't have the courage to drive because I have no sense of direction. I'll go I'll drive up one-way streets the wrong way, and I have no perspective. I don't know if somebody's in any particular lane. So that's a particular kind of courage that I haven't overcome yet. As simple as it seems, so many people drive. Like, you love to drive.
Oh, I love to drive.
You love to drive. And to me, it's like, it's really scary, So everybody has such unique, characteristics. Some people are afraid of bugs, right? I remember one woman had a mouse in her house, and that mouse was taking over her life. That mouse was stronger than her. And then she determined, I'm not going to be defeated by this mouse. I'm going to have the courage to get stronger than the mouse, and ultimately the mouse left, or however the mouse left, I'm not sure. But what about, do you have examples of courage?
Well, I'll tell you. My friend, he told me, you speak so much about the Squanzin, you have to prove it, okay? You have to prove the power of chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. So it was like a smack in the face, okay? And I had to challenge myself to go to art school, okay? And I had the manual in my hand for, all the classes, this, that, and the other, the application form. And I'm sitting there, okay, in the laundromat with my manual, okay, and I'm shaking and my teeth are rattling. I'm so scared because I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. I don't know if I'll be able to do it. I don't know anything, but I know that I have to do this, okay? And I did it. I got the application. I mean, there was some mistakes in between, but I got in. And I got in. I said, I wanted to be in that school at this particular time. And I got in that school at that particular time. Because if I hadn't challenged that, the next semester or the next year or whatever the next graduating class would have been, I would have had to been in school full time. I had to work. I couldn't afford that, you know. So, and all along the way, I had to make decisions, and I could have lost a lot of different stuff, but somehow I was protected, and I went ahead. I got my degree. I got out of school, and I'm out of student loan debt.
Right.
So
Yay,
all
yay,
of that,
yay.
you know. But everything was a challenge.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, and I also want to say, those of you, these days jobs are really a challenge. So those of you, especially young people looking for jobs and getting lots of rejections, it's so easy to just want to give up. But don't, just keep on. Don't ever be defeated, and don't give up on yourself. Somehow, somewhere, there's something for you. You may have to create it, you may have to wait a little bit, but there's something for you. Relationships too. You know, maybe you haven't had the best, you know, relationships, or maybe you haven't had any relationships, but somewhere along the line, things will appear in your life, and you'll be able to attract them to you.
Yeah.
So,
Let's see. So we're talking about great acts of courage, right?
maybe, yeah.
They said it's a muscle, right? So somebody who started very small, very young, you know, maybe with a bully in the playground, you know, standing up to that bully was a small act of courage. But that small act can turn into a bigger act. Like, say that person is now sitting in a boardroom, and they're doing something that is not good. Standing up and saying, this is not good, that's a great act of courage, because you're putting a lot of yourself on the line, you know, but those acts make a difference.
So don't look at adversity in a negative way. Adversity is there to build up your confidence and build up your resilience and strength.
If you
right?
look at it that way.
If you look at it that way, yes, yes. And you know, I have to say again, our practice in the SGI allows your life to look at everything in a positive way, not in a negative way, because everything is an opportunity. You know, crisis and opportunity, same, you know, same sides.
You know, that brings me back to when I first started the practice, and I would have a problem, and they'd say, congratulations.
Right, absolutely.
And I'd be like, what are you,
What's
crazy?
wrong with you? Yeah.
This is a problem.
I lost my job, congratulations, right?
And it took me a long time to realize, yeah, that's an adversity, but now you have something to challenge.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely. And a life without challenge is so boring. Would you rather swim in a lake or swim in the ocean? People love the ocean because of the crashing waves. It's so dramatic. So I think that's going to wrap up. I'm going to kind of share some things, encouraging words, if that's okay. Courage, strength, and wisdom well up in those who consciously take on everything as the protagonist, and you know that's our favorite word, protagonist, and person responsible for achieving their goals. Unlimited wisdom and ardent resolve arise from a sense of responsibility. The important thing is to take the first step. Bravely overcoming one small fear, as we were talking about, gives you the courage to take on the next. And if you summon your courage to challenge something, you'll never be left with regret. How sad it is to spend your life wishing, if only I had a little more courage. And we receive encouraging words every day, which I send out to many people. And this is actually my favorite, because one of my real heroes in life is Eleanor Roosevelt, who is an amazing, amazing woman, and had a very struggling childhood, actually. So this appeared today, and I thought I would share this. This is a very old book for today and tomorrow, okay? Life is full of unexpected suffering. Even so, as Eleanor Roosevelt said, if you can live through that, a difficult situation, you can live through anything. You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. That's exactly right. Struggling against great difficulty enables us to develop ourselves tremendously. We can call forth and manifest those abilities lying dormant within us. We don't even know we have such abilities. Difficulty can be a source of dynamic growth and positive progress.
And you know, the other thing is, people have a misconception about courage. You know, that, oh, you have this, you know. You don't have it. It's you're afraid, but you act despite the fear.
Right, absolutely.
You push yourself forward. And that's my little ending to that.
Okay, and then the end is, and we would love to hear from you. Tell us about your small, big acts of courage, whatever it is. We'd love to dialogue with you and actually have you on the show, which would be really fun. You can email us at mommas, MOMMAS podcast@gmail.com. Once again,
I'm Carla.
I'm Arlaana, and we are
Don't Mess with the Mommas.
MOMMAS. I know you're so tired of us saying that. Don't forget our motto. You are the protagonist of your life, not the victim of your destiny. You could find us wherever you view your podcast, as well as hear your podcasts. We are on TikTok and Instagram. And we are on YouTube, and we're on Spotify and Amazon Music and Apple. So please, please, please connect with us. We'd love to hear from you. Our purpose for all this is to encourage your life as much as possible. We're all connected. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye.